Today we're going to explore one of the most fascinating discoveries in neuroscience, neuroplasticity. This is the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. And the exciting news is that adults can harness this power to acquire completely new talents, even in domains like music, mathematics, or creative invention. For decades, neuroscientists believed that the adult brain was essentially fixed. The prevailing view was that after childhood, your neural circuits were set in stone. You couldn't teach an old dog new tricks, as the saying goes. But this turned out to be completely wrong. Starting in the 1960s and accelerating through the 1990s, researchers discovered that the brain remains plastic throughout life. Even in your 70s or 80s, your brain can form new synapses, strengthen existing connections, and even generate new neurons in certain regions. Here's a simplified model of a neuron with its synapses. A single neuron can have anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 synaptic connections with other neurons. These connections are where learning happens. So what exactly is neuroplasticity? Let me give you a precise definition. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, strengthening existing ones, and even pruning away connections that aren't being used. It's a dynamic, ongoing process. There are 4 key mechanisms by which the brain changes. Let me walk you through each one. First is synaptic strengthening, also called long-term potentiation, or LTP. When two neurons fire together repeatedly, the connection between them becomes stronger. This is the famous principle. Neurons that fire together wire together. Initially, the connection is weak. But with repeated activation, the synapse becomes stronger. More neurotransmitter receptors are added, the signal transmission becomes more efficient, and the connection stabilizes. Second is synaptogenesis, the formation of entirely new synapses. When you learn something completely new, your brain doesn't just strengthen existing connections, it creates new ones. Third is neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons. This was once thought impossible in adults, but we now know it occurs in the hippocampus, a region critical for learning and memory. About 700 new neurons are born daily in the adult hippocampus. Fourth is myelination. Myelin is a fatty insulation that wraps around axons, the long projections of neurons. More myelin means signals travel faster. Practice increases myelination, which is why skills become more automatic with repetition. Now here's a question. How long does it actually take to rewire neural circuits? Can you learn piano in a week? Let's do some back-of-the-envelope calculations. Research suggests that acquiring basic competence in a new complex skill requires roughly 300 to 1,000 hours of deliberate practice. For true expertise, studies like those by Anders Ericsson suggest 10,000 hours, though this number is debated. Let's say you practice 2 hours per day. That's a realistic commitment for an adult with other responsibilities. 300 hours divided by 2 hours per day equals 150 days. That's about 5 months to reach basic competence. For 1,000 hours, you're looking at 500 days, which is about 17 months, or roughly a year and a half. So realistically, an adult could become competent at something like piano in 5 to 18 months with consistent practice. Not overnight, but definitely achievable. Now you might be asking, are children still better learners than adults? This is the critical period hypothesis. Yes, children do have higher baseline plasticity, especially in sensory and motor regions. This is why language acquisition is easier before puberty. The auditory cortex is especially plastic in childhood. However, adults have significant advantages. Adults have better metacognition, they can use deliberate practice strategies, they have more background knowledge to connect new information to, and they have better attention control. The adult brain compensates for reduced plasticity with superior executive function. You can be more systematic, more analytical, and more strategic in your learning approach. So what specific practice patterns most effectively reshape neural circuits? Let's look at the evidence-based strategies. First is deliberate practice with immediate feedback. This isn't just mindless repetition. You need to work at the edge of your ability, get immediate feedback on errors, and correct them. This maximizes long-term potentiation. You want to practice in the learning zone, just beyond your comfort zone. Too easy, and you won't trigger plasticity. Too hard, and you'll just get frustrated without productive learning. Second is spaced repetition. Cramming doesn't work for building neural circuits. You need to space practice sessions over days and weeks. This gives time for synaptic consolidation, the process where temporary changes become permanent. It's better to practice 1 hour per day for 10 days than to practice 10 hours in 1 day. The distributed practice leads to stronger, more permanent neural changes. Third is sleep. This is absolutely critical and often underestimated. During sleep, especially during slow-wave sleep and REM sleep, the brain replays what you practiced during the day. This replay strengthens the relevant neural circuits. Studies show that sleep can improve skill retention by 20 to 30% compared to equal time awake. One study found that musicians who slept after practice improved their performance more than those who stayed awake. Fourth is interleaving. Instead of practicing one skill repetitively, mix different skills or problem types. This feels harder, but it leads to better long-term retention and more flexible neural representations. For example, when learning piano, mix scales, chords, and songs in one practice session rather than drilling scales for 30 minutes straight. Fifth is focused attention. Neuroplasticity is attention-dependent. If you're distracted or practicing on autopilot, you won't trigger the neural changes. You need to be fully present and mentally engaged. Focused attention releases neuromodulators like dopamine and norepinephrine, which act as gates for plasticity. Without focus, the plasticity machinery doesn't turn on. Let's look at a specific case study. Learning music as an adult. What happens in the brain? Music is a wonderful domain for studying neuroplasticity because it engages multiple brain regions simultaneously. Auditory cortex for sound processing, motor cortex for finger movements, and prefrontal cortex for reading sheet music and planning. All these regions have to communicate and synchronize. This creates a rich network of connections. In one famous study, researchers scanned adult brains before and after 6 months of piano lessons. They practiced about 30 minutes per day. The results were striking. There was measurable gray matter increase in motor regions, controlling finger movements, and enhanced connectivity between auditory and motor regions. Here's the key finding. The amount of neural change correlated with total practice hours, not with the person's age. A 60-year-old who practiced consistently showed similar changes to a 30-year-old. Now let's look at mathematics. Can adults develop mathematical intuition later in life? First, we need to address math anxiety. This is a real neural phenomenon. Brain imaging shows that for people with math anxiety, mathematical tasks activate the same brain regions as physical pain. That's the amygdala and insula lighting up. But here's the good news. This anxiety can be reduced through gradual exposure and reframing. As adults practice math in a low-stress environment, the amygdala activation decreases over weeks to months. Mathematical thinking primarily activates the prefrontal cortex for logical reasoning and the parietal cortex, especially the intraparietal sulcus, which is specialized for numerical magnitude processing. The parietal cortex gives you number sense, the intuition for quantities. The prefrontal cortex handles logical operations and problem-solving strategies. Adults can develop better number sense through specific practice. One effective method is estimation practice. Instead of always calculating exactly, estimate first. This builds parietal cortex engagement. Another strategy is visualization. Try to represent mathematical problems spatially or geometrically. This leverages the brain's powerful visual processing systems, which are already well developed in adults. Research shows that adults practicing math deliberately for 3 to 6 months can improve their skills significantly. One study showed that adult learners improved their mental arithmetic by 40% after just 8 weeks of daily practice. Finally, let's explore creativity and invention. Can neuroplasticity enhance creative thinking? Creativity and invention involve connecting distant brain regions that don't normally communicate. This is called increased functional connectivity. You're linking concepts from different domains. Creative thinking strongly activates the default mode network, a set of regions active when your mind wanders. This network includes the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus. Imagine your brain has different modules for music, math, visual arts, and language. Creativity happens when you build bridges between these normally separate modules. To enhance creative plasticity, deliberately practice combining unrelated concepts. If you're a musician, study mathematics. If you're a mathematician, try painting. These cross-domain activities force your brain to build new, interregional connections. Research shows that walking and allowing your mind to wander can boost creative insights. One study found that people generate 60% more creative ideas while walking compared to sitting. REM sleep is particularly important for creativity. During REM, the brain makes unusual associations between concepts. Salvador Dali and Thomas Edison famously used techniques to wake during these creative sleep stages to capture insights. Let me give you some concrete numbers. How much can the brain actually change? Studies using structural MRI showed that intensive practice can increase gray matter volume by 2 to 5% in target brain regions over several months. 2 to 5% might sound small, but remember, the brain is a densely packed organ. This represents thousands of new synapses and dendritic branches. The human brain has roughly 100 trillion synapses. Even a 1% increase in a specific region represents billions of new connections. Here's a critical principle. Novelty and challenge are essential for triggering plasticity. If you do the same thing over and over without challenge, plasticity shuts down. Your brain says, I've already optimized for this task, no need to change further. You must constantly increase difficulty. If you're learning piano, once you can play a piece comfortably, move to a harder piece. If you're learning math, once you master one concept, push to the next level. This principle is called progressive overload, borrowed from exercise physiology. You progressively increase the challenge to keep triggering adaptation. Here's something counterintuitive. Making mistakes is essential for learning. When you make an error, your brain generates what's called a prediction error signal. This is a mismatch between what you expected to happen and what actually happened. This prediction error causes dopamine neurons in the midbrain to fire. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that gates plasticity, so errors actually open the window for learning. Research suggests the optimal error rate is about 15 to 20%. If you're getting everything right, you're not learning efficiently. If you're making errors on 80% of attempts, you're probably too far outside your ability level. Let's dive a bit deeper into the neurochemistry. What molecules are involved in plasticity? First is BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is often called fertilizer for the brain. BDNF promotes the growth of new neurons and synapses. Here's something practical. Aerobic exercise dramatically increases BDNF levels. Just 30 minutes of moderate exercise can boost BDNF for several hours afterward. So a smart strategy is to do some light aerobic exercise before your practice sessions. Go for a 20-minute jog before piano practice or before studying math. Second is acetylcholine. This neurotransmitter is released when you pay close attention. It tells the brain, this is important, remember this. Third is norepinephrine, which provides arousal and alertness. Too little and you're drowsy, too much and you're anxious. You want a moderate level. Let me synthesize all of this into practical advice. How should you design your practice sessions? Step 1. Start with 10 minutes of light aerobic exercise to boost BDNF and get blood flowing to the brain. Step 2. Practice for 25 to 45 minutes with intense focus. After about 45 minutes, attention naturally wanes and plasticity becomes less efficient. Step 3. Take a 5 to 10 minute break. Walk around, let your mind wander. This break allows for offline consolidation. Step 4. Repeat the cycle 2 to 3 times per day maximum. More than this, and you get diminishing returns. Quality over quantity. Step 5. Sleep at least 7 to 8 hours. This is non-negotiable. Without sleep, the neural changes don't consolidate properly. Let's set realistic expectations for different skills. For basic piano competence, where you can play simple songs and read basic sheet music, expect 6 to 12 months with daily practice. For mathematical fluency in a new area, like calculus if you already know algebra, expect 3 to 6 months of focused study. For developing creative innovation skills, this is more diffuse and harder to measure, but expect 12 to 24 months of cross-domain practice and deliberate creativity exercises. Let's address the age question directly. How much does age matter? Plasticity does decrease with age, but it's a gradual decline, not a cliff at age 25. A 50-year-old has perhaps 70 to 80% of the plasticity of a 25-year-old. But older adults compensate with better learning strategies, more motivation, and richer knowledge networks to connect new information to. In one remarkable study, 70-year-olds learned to juggle. Brain scans showed gray matter increases in visual and motor areas after just 3 months of practice. The limit is not your age. The limit is your consistency and the quality of your practice strategy. Beyond practice itself, certain lifestyle factors enhance plasticity. Exercise. 30 minutes 3 to 5 times per week of aerobic activity. This is one of the most powerful plasticity enhancers. Nutrition. Omega-3 fatty acids found in fish oil are critical for neural membrane health and plasticity. Deficiency impairs learning. Stress management. Chronic stress and elevated cortisol actively inhibit plasticity. Practices like meditation can reduce this. Social engagement. Learning with others or teaching what you learn enhances encoding and motivation, both of which promote plasticity. Speaking of teaching, this deserves special mention. When you teach something, you're forced to organize the knowledge differently in your brain. You have to think about how to explain it clearly, anticipate misconceptions, and make connections explicit. This reorganization process strengthens existing neural pathways and creates new ones. It's one of the most effective learning strategies. Even if you don't have someone to teach, explain concepts out loud to yourself or to an imaginary student. This engages the same neural processes. Let me highlight common mistakes that limit plasticity. Mistake 1. Practicing while distracted or multitasking. If you're checking your phone every 5 minutes, you're not engaging the attention systems needed to gate plasticity. Mistake 2. Not getting enough sleep. You can practice perfectly, but without sleep the consolidation doesn't happen. It's like depositing money, but the bank never processes it. Mistake 3. Staying in the comfort zone. If practice feels easy and pleasant all the time, you're not triggering plasticity. Learning should feel challenging. Mistake 4. Giving up too early. Neural changes take weeks to months to manifest. Many people quit right before they would have seen breakthrough improvements. Eventually, everyone hits a plateau. Progress slows or stops. This is frustrating but completely normal. Plateaus occur when your current practice routine no longer sufficiently challenges the brain. You've optimized for the current level. The solution is to deliberately increase difficulty or change your approach. If you're stuck on piano, maybe focus on rhythm instead of melody. If stuck on math, try teaching it instead of just solving problems. Think of plateaus not as failures, but as opportunities. They signal that your brain has successfully optimized one level and is ready for the next challenge. Let me give you a final synthesis. A neuroplasticity toolkit you can use immediately. Tool 1. Cultivate focused attention. Eliminate distractions. Use techniques like the Pomodoro method, 25 minutes of pure focus. Tool 2. Progressively increase difficulty. As soon as something becomes comfortable, make it harder. Tool 3. Use spaced repetition. Practice across multiple days, not in marathon sessions. Tool 4. Embrace errors. Aim for a 15 to 20% error rate. Errors are signals that plasticity is engaged. Tool 5. Exercise before learning sessions to boost BDNF. Tool 6. Prioritize sleep. 7 to 8 hours minimum. Consider naps after intense practice. Tool 7. Interleave different skills rather than blocking practice. Mix things up. Tool 8. Teach what you learn, even to yourself, to reorganize and strengthen neural networks. In conclusion, the adult brain is far more plastic and adaptable than we once thought. You are not stuck with the skills you developed in childhood. Neural circuits remain malleable throughout life. With the right practice strategies, you can acquire new talents in music, mathematics, creative invention, or any domain. The keys are consistency, appropriate challenge, focused attention, and adequate sleep. These four factors create the conditions for robust neuroplasticity. Remember, the brain is a use-it-or-lose-it adaptive system. Keep challenging yourself with new learning throughout your life to maintain cognitive vitality. Whether you're 30, 50, or 70, your brain retains the capacity to learn remarkable new skills. The process may take months, not days, but the transformation is real and measurable.